whether people like him.
No, that's not true. Because if that was the case, then I'll come back onto Trump. There wouldn't be such a divide in America.
No, because that's different. Because he's being accused. He's being accused of doing something inappropriate, not having.
No. Before Theo, come on. Before that came out, he was not liked by the left, and he was liked by the Midwest in America.
But
all right,
because they trusted combined
him.
Two things. You combined liking and
So
sexual history.
The decision was based on him being liked and him not, or him not being liked. So likability has a big factor with that one, and it's the same thing with this whole.
I don't think so. I think
hold on a second.
To be competent.
There's this whole thing with the Brett Kavanaugh thing, who's going up for Supreme Court judge in America, and the reason why a lot of people don't like him is because of Trump. So these protests yesterday, I think they were, was regarding because there was an anti-Trump vote
being voted about. That is simply a political game playing, because as we all know, suddenly 3 accusers coming up at exactly the time of the voting to put him on the Supreme Court is not coincidental. It will be 1,000,000,000 to 1.
Whereas not, but the thing
is, political game playing, nothing to do with liking.
Because Trump nominated him, otherwise people wouldn't really care. It's because Trump nominated him for that.
But liking is not what makes you vote for someone. Liking is what prevents you complaining about someone. Totally different.
So if you don't like someone, then you would vote for them either way.
If you think they're competent, yes. And I've seen a lot of people say,
no, competency as well.
I didn't like them. I mean, liking may have some element, but it's not the deciding factor. According to the research.
And I'll reiterate to what I said. There's many variables to that, and likability is one factor of that.
True.
It's one small factor of that, but it is a factor of that.
But
it's
deciding factor.
Because it was the same with Al Gore when he went up against George W. Bush. Al Gore was actually a more likable person than George Bush.
Okay, I don't know enough about that. But all I'm saying is, according to the research, it's competence rather than likability. And a lot of people have told me
again that's just one other variable, though.
Yeah, it is. But a lot of people tell me their choices about whether to make certain choices, depended more on whether they thought the person could deliver, than they liked them. But the research shows that whether you will complain about someone is less about their competency and more about whether you like them.
Some people don't even realise whether it comes down to likability because it's such a subconscious decision anyway. Okay, because the thing is, we're attracted to people who we like. We are turned off by people we don't like.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, so it is a psychological. Look, as I said, likability is just one variable out of several variables in terms of competence, in terms of mental toughness, in terms of influence, in terms of marketability. You know, how well you've marketed it, how much money you've had to actually put into the election.
Yeah, but that's why you get really unpleasant people being voted into positions of power because they are seen as competent, even though they are really unpleasant. Well, I mean, a lot of CEOs get voted into positions of power, and most of them are exceptionally unlikable. Trump, exceptionally unlikable, actually.
By who?
Boris, exceptionally unlikable.
Yeah, but by who though?
By a lot of people who see them and actually have any essence of what they're like. Well, pay attention.
A lot, you know, if you want to look about Trump, a lot of people do like Trump, and there's a lot of people in power who like Trump.
Him for what he's done.
No. There's, he wouldn't have got to where he is without his connections, and he's got a lot of connections, and he was very likable within his peer group.
Well, you've got to be careful because actually Trump won mainly because of his manipulation of social media, which Hillary Clinton didn't do.
Well, there's a number of reasons for that,
and that's swarm.
Hillary Clinton spent twice as much as he did,
more than twice actually. That's swarm technology. So swarm technology is what happens when you use social media.
Again, there's a number. I'll say I've said it several times. It comes down to a number of different variables.
And again, on social media, one of the strongest predictors of whether you'll vote for someone is how many of your friends have voted for that person, irrespective of whether you like them, all think they're competent.
Well, that is a fact. That is another factor that's got to be taken into account. So there's several things. You know, there's not one isolated thing alone that's actually going to decide. And you know, in terms of Trump, people passionately like him and passionately dislike him. I mean, there's queues going up to his rallies. But the thing is, but it's not even about him. I mean, you look at some of the, our politicians in the past. Tony Blair was liked, even though he was a total bloody liar.
Yeah, but liking depends on whether it will determine whether you can get away with things. I'll say that again. Being voted into positions of power is mainly about your perceived competence. Whether you stay there depends on how much you're liked. Okay, because whether you're staying there depends on being attacked and dethroned.
Well, it depends how much you won by. Depends who you're going up against. Let's face it, he went up against William Hague. He went up against Michael Howard. Michael Howard wasn't particularly liked either.
But that's different. You're talking about,
he was very less marketable.
You're talking about relativity. Even research in monkeys shows that the head monkey will only stay there if the tribe of monkeys likes him. If they don't like him, then 2 or 3 other males will club together and get rid of him. And it's the same in any type of leadership. So if you get a ruthless dictator, they will be deposed eventually.
Look, the good thing about someone like Tony Blair was it was very clear that he'd studied NLP, by the way. I don't know if you know that. As did Bill Clinton. He studied NLP, and one of the big things that he always did, he did the Jesus pose.
Yes.
And the Jesus pose was all, trust me in what I'm telling you.
With the hands, with their palms upturned.
Palms up open. It's the picture of the... Was it Mary Magdalene and the 12 disciples, isn't it?
And indeed, there's a nice TED talk of someone talking about that type of body language.
Oh, is there? I haven't seen that.
And he said, now let me show you this. And he said, it would be really helpful if all of you went there. And he kept his palms raised up. And then he said, now what about this? I want you. And he started pointing to walk over there. He said, how did that make you feel? And everyone agreed that the pointing and the direct orders made them feel resentful.
Well, I mean, that pose is known as the placator pose, by the way. Whereas that one, so the pointing the finger is actually seen as a sword, so it's more confrontational.
Although Tony Blair has made a few noises about forming another party and coming back, hasn't he?
Oh, is he really? Yeah. Actually, Donald Trump actually uses the finger pointing a lot,
which is one of his problems.
Is it? But it's also what's got him elected with other people. But look, there's body language taken into account. There's a certain words you use that take into account. It's the way you deliver it. I mean, I've got to say, Theresa May didn't cough this year. I remember last year she was spluttering all over the place, which made her look. And even though she had a frog in her throat or whatever she did, it doesn't matter. It's how she came across.
But remember the thing. So again, what the research shows...
We're having 2 different conversations here, by the way.
No, because you just went from Trump to May, and I agreed with May. But going back to Trump, what it reminded me of the pointing, alpha male, you see, he wants to bludgeon everybody into submission. And
who does?
Trump.
Oh, right.
And you can't do that if you want people to continue cooperating with you, because they'll just ignore you. They'll just avoid you. And that's going to be one of his big problems. He's a statesman. He's not a statesman. He's a wheeler dealer who's managed to get somewhere through sheer power and force of power.
Actually, he's a scrapper. He's a scrapper.
That's it, exactly.
He's a scrapper. He'll fight. And the thing is, if you want someone to fight on your side, you want him in your corner.
But scrappers are not politicians, and therefore scrappers...
Maybe you don't always need a politician.
Scrappers will do well with scrappers. So he did well with Kim Jong-un, for instance. But... they've shown this with rats, for instance. So rats, the play circuit has been shown to even be present in rats. So play is fundamental to all sorts of behaviour. And what they've shown is that a subordinate rat will always have to initiate play with a senior rat, with a dominant rat. Even though the dominant will be able to win every single interaction, if the dominant rat doesn't let the subordinate win 1/3 of the time, the subordinate will not initiate any more play. And therefore, if Trump is ruthless every single time, then he will find that people simply will not negotiate with him any longer.
Well, he's not. He hasn't been ruthless. Look, I'm not a big fan of... Well, actually, I don't admire him. Actually, no, I probably respect him. I wouldn't say I admire him, I respect him. All right, but I don't like him. I do think he's a psychopath.
There you are.
Someone actually asked me, is he a racist? And I'm thinking, no, I don't think he's a racist. However, I did counteract and say, if he was around in the 1850s when slavery was still around, he would have exploited it. But he wouldn't have exploited it just because slaves are black. He would have exploited them even if they were white and they were enslaved.
Would you have voted for him? Would you have voted for him if you're American?
Would I vote for Trump? I think I would have, yes.
Okay, there's your answer. So you don't like him, but you think he's competent. So
but
there's your
answer. I respect him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you respect because he's competent, but you don't like him, but you still would vote for him.
Actually, I do like him. I didn't really want to. It's just not, actually, no, I don't actually know. No, it's not that I do like him. I don't dislike him. Whereas I disliked Hillary. I don't dislike him. That's probably the best way. I could take him a little bit. Do you know that I agree with 60% of what he's wanting to do. But I disagree with 60% of how he's saying it. Is the best way I can say it. So I do respect him, you know.
But you don't like a lot of what he does.
No, I don't like a lot of how he does.
Okay.
All right. But the thing is, you know, he's doing what he's doing for the states, and they're now reaping the rewards from that. And but and the reason why I probably respect someone like him is because many years ago, probably about 10 years ago, actually probably before David Cameron came into power, I said I'm waiting for the day a politician will come in and will actually has the balls to say what they really want to say.
Can a president write their own pardons?
I think there's so many they can do.
What, can they write their own pardon themselves?
No, right. I don't think they can.
Okay.
So if he gets impeached, for example, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, you're right.
No.
That was a stupid question, wasn't it? Because I was just thinking.
No.
I was just thinking that one of the things that one has to be suspicious about is his financial dealings and tax history. Let's face it. Because he's been bankrupt a few times.
Okay, look, let's put this one to bed. Most people who are willing to take a risk,
entrepreneurs get bankrupt.
All right, entrepreneurs have been bankrupt. Okay, but the fact they're willing to take a risk, because the thing is, you don't get any growth if you actually play it safe.
And of course, that would rule out any kind of culpability, because there was an article about him this week saying that examination of his financial records showed that there'd been a certain amount of wheeler dealing by his father to illegally transfer assets to him and avoid $500 million worth of tax. But of course, if he's gone bankrupt a few times...
Yeah, but the thing is, show me a businessman who's not prepared to do that. Because no one in the political scene is playing a clean game.
Who has a high probability of having ADHD, for the reasons that we've already talked about in previous podcasts, is highly likely to have a disorganized tax history.
Well, look, whatever it is, his tax return. There was one set of tax returns that came out.
And he's refused to declare them.
Came out a few months ago. He paid something like about $53 million in tax in 1 year or something. Yeah, someone like Bernie Sanders paid $20,000 in tax.
Oh, I mean, nobody's
and when you put that into that level of perspective, is that 53 million done a lot more for the country, or is that 20,000 that Bernie Sanders has
Well, you know what they say, what I say is the main predictor of whether you'll do something is whether you simply can. So maybe he couldn't get away with it at that time.
He's always said, I'll pay as less tax as I can because I'm a businessman. And the thing is, you want someone like that on your side. I remember when Jeffrey Archer went for Mayor of London against Ken Livingstone, and he just come out of prison, I think it was, for lying about his, for perjury, for lying about his affair. And that's what they put him in prison for.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was.
You can get prison for that.
Yeah, perjury. You can get you can get up to 7 years for perjury.
And why was he in court questioned about having an affair? What was the crime he was being investigated for?
I can't remember. It was so long ago. I mean, look,
Gosh.
this is like right at the beginning when we started getting a mayor in London.
Gosh.
But I remember when someone asked me, because mind you, I hated Ken Livingstone anyway. Yeah, I hated Ken Livingstone, but I really liked Jeffrey Archer, and I thought he may be a crook, but he's on our side in some ways. Anyway, guys, look, we're going to have to leave it there.
And antidepressants do work for a lot of people.
And then we ended up talking about
And
politics.
they're safe.
That's depressive enough. Okay, guys, thanks very much for listening.
Thank
We'll
you.
speak to you next